Okay, so it looks like it's preparing for Facebook. Let's see what happens here. And we're starting to record. Let's see what's happening. There we go. So for those of you that are watching through either our YouTube, which you could watch this after, you could watch this in our
everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. So this part of me talking is just us in preparation. So you may want to fast forward just a teeny bit while we're setting up. So this is going live.
So we're not live yet, as far as I can see.
No, not yet. Here it is.
Okay.
Here we go. We are live. Okay, so now we're live on Facebook too. So hi everybody. We are, does it say?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So we're doing this as an experiment. We are streaming on 2 platforms right now. Plus, if anybody wants to join us on Zoom, you're absolutely welcome to. So this is streaming through our Mighty Networks platform, which is our community platform. It's also streaming through Facebook, and eventually we will be uploading this to YouTube. So much going on here, but you are welcome to join us, and we're going to try and monitor the chat because this live, Sarah and I really envisioned having the ability to workshop things that are going on for you and in your families. So yeah, there's that. So fantastic. Looks like Paloma just joined us too.
Oh, okay. Where's she? Is she coming to the Mighty
Networks? She's joining now.
You can see her, can you? Oh, hello. There she is. Okay. Cool. Hello. You found us.
Do you want to be on camera, or would you like to just be to watch? Because we're streaming live. You could turn your camera off if you don't want to be on camera. It's up to you. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so now we're live on Facebook too. So yeah, don't do what I just did.
Okay. All right, cool. So there are a couple of people watching. I don't know who they are. There's a bit of a delay. So if you're watching on Facebook, in the Partnership Parenting Movement Facebook group, say hello so we know who you are. And we're faffing about a bit today because if you've just joined, we're trying something new. We're streaming in our community group as well on Mighty Networks. And that's why we've got Annie and Paloma with us. They're not on camera, but they're in the Zoom room with us because that's how it happens in the Mighty Networks, which we've just found out. So that's cool. Right. And what we're talking about today is I think, well, I know that it's a process that you'll find really useful if you're finding it tricky in the moment when your kid's doing something that's really bugging you, how to kind of talk yourself back off that ledge, if you know what I mean. Because often what happens, well, pretty much all the time what happens, unless you know to do something different, is your child does something that normally you don't want them to do, or won't do something that you do want them to do. And then, you know, that invokes a particular feeling in us as a parent because of our programming and the way we were raised and what we think about the world, whatever, all sorts of reasons why things that our kids do bother us. And so then we add on our reaction to the situation. And, you know, that's that kind of danger zone where you start really wanting to make your kid do what you want them to do. And you might throw in some manipulation, some punishments, some attempts at bribery. You might get cross, you might shout, you might use some words that are intended to shame them and get them to do what it is that you're trying to get them to do, all of which is our stuff, right? And we just add that onto the situation. and then we don't really get anywhere. So we're not kind of we're not unpacking like everything about partnership parenting today, but we're talking about a really specific way or process that we've marked out that we think will give you some tools to use in the moment, so that you can actually approach your child with calm and move forward in that situation.
Right. And what we're really talking about specifically right now is you, the parent, your reaction to
Yeah.
your child's behavior. And that's what today is really talking about. So most of the time when we find that we're reacting and sometimes in a negative way, it's because we're responding to their behavior, not to our child, not to the essence and core of who they are, but it's something they've done. And that behavior, that thing that they do, they're always in your space or in your face or touching you. I saw somebody posted something about that, or they're slamming the door when you told them not to slam the door 25 times. Like, there's so much going on there. It's less about your child and it's more about the behavior that you're reacting to. So that's what we're talking about. And for those of you that are here watching, we've got a couple people joined us in our Zoom room, but you can't see it in the live broadcast. But I do see that Sophia and other people are watching on Facebook. And for those of you who happen to stumble upon this, maybe on YouTube or in the future in one of our like in our community group, I'm going to ask you to go through this process with us. But the very first thing that we're going to ask you to do is to either get a piece of paper and a pencil, or really in the forefront of your mind, get clear about that thing that happened, that behavior that really, really sparks a response in you, that thing that your kid or child or children or partner always does that you just can't deal with anymore. That's the part, this is the experience that we're going to walk you off the ledge. And Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit more about kind of how to qualify what to work with today before we actually get into these steps?
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say is just bear in mind, because this is going to be a process that you can use time and time again, and depending on what's going on, what the specifics of the situation are, it's the sort of thing that you can absolutely write out in a journaly kind of way. And there's sometimes some really complex things going on and you can list them all out separately. And sometimes it's a really simple thing that you can literally do while you're just kind of walking around the kitchen, trying not to mutter to yourself under your breath, but always keeping at the forefront of your mind that this is not about changing your child's behavior or getting your child to do what you want them to do. It's actually about how we respond and how we can start to think about the inner work that's required. So the stuff that Lainey and I support parents in, and the way we advocate relating with our children, is like basically the opposite of getting a kid to do what you want. So many other tools out there when you're looking at the parenting world are about how to get your child to do the thing you want them to do. And that's not what we're talking about. So we're talking about something that is far more radical than that, because it actually requires a very high degree of responsibility for us as parents, and you've got to be prepared to do the work. Because if you come to this not prepared to do the work and not prepared to be really honest, what happens is while you're even working through this process, you accidentally, without even realizing, start going back to what the kid's doing and putting the emphasis back on what the kid's doing. So just until you get used to how to do it, more quickly, almost like a meditative type of practice, you just have to keep reminding yourself, this is about me. This is about me. Yeah, because kids are actually far more straightforward than we think, right? Like, we're the ones that are complicated.
Right.
Yeah.
So now that you've had some time to think about that thing, that behavior, that thing that your kid does that puts you out on the ledge, let's work with that. And so this is something that one of the processes that we share in our workshop, that the Ditch the Rules workshop. And we're just sharing a small portion of this with you today, but it's a really powerful process to go through. But again, we really wanted to extend our reach and really share with you some really useful tools, so you've got a sense of how you can start taking that radical accountability in yourself and within your family. So everybody's got their thing, that thing, yeah? If you are here in our Zoom room with us, go ahead and give us a response. You got something you're working with? And if you're watching on Facebook Live, let us know you got that thing, because we're moving on. All right, guys, you got that thing. The step one is really to identify the behavior, the action, the thing that your kid's child or partner does that just gets you to the edge, right? And this is part of recognizing our own triggers. And the awareness of that is the thing that we asked you to do before we got started. That actually is step one. What is the behavior? So I'm going to invite you to write down the behavior, the never putting their dishes away. They do this, they leave their socks on the floor. The thing that they actually do, the behavior that gets under your skin. So that's step one. Did you have something to add, Sarah?
No, I was just thinking about all the
I can't blame anybody right now for anything, because it's all me. Because I'm living alone in this moment. So step two is to now take that behavior and translate or distill what are the emotions that are elicited inside of you. What are the feelings that you are feeling when you witness either the behavior happening or the results of the behavior? Like the socks on the floor, maybe you don't have to see them actually throw the socks on the floor, but you know whose socks those are. So you don't have to see them taking it off and tossing them. That's the behavior, but the actual awareness that the sock is there. What are the feelings that are happening inside of you? And this is truly an invitation to get very clear about naming those emotions. You might know that you're pissed off, but let's really sort of dissect what each of those emotions are. Are they anger, frustration? Are they, what is the combination, the mixture of the complexity of the emotions? Because that's usually tied to a lot of other things. And the other thing that I'll tell you about a certain pattern of feelings that come up inside of you, or emotions, you're writing that as a pattern to recognize, to go back to those thoughts. So thoughts trigger emotions, emotions then in turn trigger the pattern thinking. So identifying what those feelings are specifically. So that's the second step. So take a moment to jot that down. Sarah, anything?
I was just going to say, I mean, this is the step where often people will then go, my kid this, my kid that. And this is where you have the first opportunity to distance yourself slightly from the behavior. This is like the first opportunity where you get to go, okay, this is my feelings. This is what I'm feeling in this moment. Yeah, and that's really important. Yeah, because that's really pivotal to the outcome, I guess. And if you've got any, like if anyone wants to write anything down in our chat or in our comments, please absolutely feel free to do that if you want to. But if you just want to keep it in your head, that's cool as well.
So the third step is a step that you probably in the beginning, you're going to separate it from being in the moment and being in the process. It is recognize and do your work, right? So this for many people will be the later process. In a lot of our workshops, we give some tools to really get below those emotions and identify what beliefs are attached to those emotions, and eventually to get to the fear below that. Because generally, each of these reactions that come up inside of us are sparked by that fear that I will always be the one cleaning up. Nobody will clean up after themselves. And then the next step would be they're never going to learn how to clean up after themselves. The next step might be they're going to be 52 and living in my basement. Next step might be I am never going to get peace in my life. Like whatever that storyline is, do the work. We could talk about that in another video. I talk a lot about identifying the fear, recognizing the attached emotions, identifying the desire below the fear, and then recognizing the stories that we're putting into the gaps. So number 3 is all about separating yourself from the situation and using that as an opportunity to really make a note. I'm going to go do the work necessary to really identify what's going on right now. Radical accountability, radical responsibility for self and our process, right?
Yeah, and you don't have to do that work right then and there. So sometimes you can if it's really quick, and maybe you've done this sort of thing before and you know exactly what we're talking about. But otherwise, you just realize that it's your stuff, and that the reaction that you've got to your child's behavior is driven by something going on inside of you, not actually your child's behavior. And you can just park it over there so that you can move on to the next step. But you have to go back to it, because if you don't go back to it, it keeps on coming up. And even if you do the work, sometimes until you've really got to the bottom of it and like deprogrammed, it will keep on coming up. But make sure you go back and do that work. Yeah.
Sophia.
So Sophia's saying, what if you can't get away from the situation? Yeah, well, that's exactly right. That's what we're talking about. So you're in a situation, your child's just tipped a bucket of water on the floor. This is the stuff that used to happen to me when my kids were little. There was like 4 of them just creating chaos. And so you can't necessarily sit there and like meditate and like work out where these feelings are coming from. You've just got to actually deal with the shit, right? So yeah, absolutely. This is why we're saying you sometimes just have to actually park it. You recognize that it's not your child, it's what's going on for you, it's the programming that you've got, it's these learned behaviors that you've got, these beliefs that are driving your reaction, and recognize it and just put it to the side, move on to the next step for now.
Right. And you're going to recognize if you're in a step 3, which is parking it for and dealing with it later. Have a little notebook, or if you have your phone, do a phone memo, right? Just remind yourself. And if you've got these steps written out, and we can type them into the Facebook group or into the chat, wherever people are seeing it, so you can use them. But really, the key, as Sarah said, is coming back to it later, right? And making that commitment to self that I need to process this. This is my work. I need to step away and do that. But
if you want to, the thing is, this is really important, I think, and this is where that radical responsibility that Lainey just mentioned really is important, that sometimes we don't want to let those things go, because we actually really like that feeling of being right and having some kind of power over our children. And we like that feeling. I think if we're really honest, we like, and this is why parents find it so hard to move on from this, because some part of them likes to keep that there. Some part of them likes to be cross at their child for not picking up their sock. You get to feel sanctimonious. You get to feel right. You get to feel like you're in charge. You get to feel really irritated that they're not listening to you. And that's what we know. That's often what our parents taught us. And it's very comfortable. And it's amazing how we can get so comfortable with suffering and pain. So on the one hand, we don't like the feeling, But on the other hand, we're quite happy to keep it around because the alternative, which is doing the work, is uncomfortable. It puts us in an uncomfortable place. So it's really important to be brutally honest with ourselves. Are you ready to let it go? If you're not ready to let it go, you're not ready to do the work, right? But if you're ready to let it go, that's the invitation. Yeah.
So Sophia writes, she means physically, she can't get away from a raging child.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not talking about doing it while you're in the middle of the scenario.
Yeah.
This is your
Yeah.
work for later. So
Yeah.
when you're in the middle of a raging child, you have a different responsibility, right? You need to make sure that their needs are met. You need to make sure they're not going to hurt themselves or hurt anybody. Like, your responsibility for yourself is to come back to it, right? It's not about telling your raging child in that moment, I'm going to go do my work now. Like, it's just, that's not what we're saying.
But this process is absolutely, you can absolutely use it in your scenario. And I don't know how old your child is. It might be useful to know that, actually, but I've got lots of experience with raging children. So it's absolutely perfect, because how we react to a child who's raging is our shit. It is. And what we're talking about is how we get to a point where we can actually be helpful. And having a child who is raging, they need to have a calm parent. They need to have a parent who's got the ability to hold space. And when we're sitting in that fight-flight mode, which is where we are when we're having a reaction to our child's behaviour, we can't really help them. So it's absolutely, like, you can absolutely use this for sure.
Yeah. And we're not asking you to match your child's energy with more rage. Like, that's not what we're saying here, right? And in fact, so number 4 is calm, in a very calm state. So maybe you do need to remove yourself, in order to move through and to get to number 4, which is to calm yourself and to really, really look at your child's behavior as not your child. Recognize, look at your child with gratitude and with grace, and recognize that the thing that your child did is not your child. It's just an expression of their behavior in that moment, right? And those, whatever words that you need to tell yourself to mentally separate, that'll help you calm your own rage. But they did this thing, right? Okay, so the thing that they did is the thing they did, but I'm going to practice looking at my child with as much grace and appreciation. So it's a totally different way of seeing your child. What did you say in the post, Sarah? You said seeing your child through the eyes of
through generous eyes. Seeing your child with generous eyes.
Generous eyes.
That's the best of them. Yeah, because what we tend to do when our kids do something, and in our mind they often do the same thing over and over again, even though we've told them not to do it 25 times, they still do it. So, and every time they do it, this reaction that we have comes up, affirming once again how terrible it is and how terrible they are. And then we start to see our child as the thing they do. You always do that. Why do you always talk to me like that? Why do you never put your socks in the bin? Why are you always so angry? And then it's really easy to see how often children kind of can end up becoming this thing, because we're seeing them as their behavior and they're not. So this is about detaching ourselves so that they're doing a thing. Maybe the thing they're doing is actually super annoying in that moment. It's just a thing. It's a thing that's happening. Like, it's raining. I just stepped in a puddle and my foot's wet. Just like it happened.
You have no idea how many times I've heard parents say, but my child is so ungrateful, and my child is irresponsible, and my child is sloppy, or my child is lazy. Like, I've heard these things so many times, and no, not being grateful and laziness and not having appreciation, all of those things are behaviors. That's not your child. That is not your child. Your child is in a stage in their life, in the moment, doing those things. They are not that thing. And that is really a huge mindset shift. And yeah, Paloma says behaviors meet our expectations or they don't, right? They either do or they don't. And you're setting yourself up for a binary experience. If you are, as the parent, living in a place of expectations and their behavior is not deemed to be worthy of the expectation, then they fail. You did not give space to your child to have the experience that they're having in that moment. So yeah, it is totally unreasonable. And thank you for that beautiful comment. Beautiful. So it's really hard for us as parents, especially when we're in reaction mode. We haven't done reaction mode, meaning we're triggered or we've gone into even more heightened fight, flight, or freeze kind of response to the trigger. We haven't done our work around whatever the issue is that triggers us, the previous steps, right? We haven't done that work, and now we're just venominless. Wait, how do you say that word? Venom.
Are you talking about venomously? Yeah.
Venomously seeing our children as the behavior. You're not in the state. You are absolutely not in the state to be in partnership with them. So in absence of all of those things, then you're talking about being in conflict, right? And conflict for those for families who haven't explored partnership paradigm, conflict like this without you doing your work would probably result in you stepping into an authoritarian paradigm, controlling the situation, demanding behavior change, screaming, and that is the opposite of what we're talking about. And we'll get to the last step in a moment, but recognize that there are two ways of going here, and we're not talking about doing that, but you have to do the first four things in order to get to the next step. And the next step, number 5, is about dialogue. So you need to be in that calm space and to be able to engage and connect with your child about what you're going through, right? So the first part of number 5.A is engage in dialogue, right? Without manipulation, without agenda, and let them know, hey, mommy's really working on her responses to socks. And I know the sock is here. And right now I am processing the things that I need to process. So I just wanted to let you know, this is where I'm at with that. So sharing in an age appropriate way. And I'm not saying turn your child into your therapist, but I'm talking about creating the opening for connection through vulnerability by sharing what your process is. Because by honoring that information, by honoring your child with that information, you're really authentically connecting, right? You're being in the moment, you're acknowledging that this is a response for you, but mommy's working on it. I am aware that this is my thing and I'm working on it, but I'm going to pick up your sock, but just know this is how I'm feeling right now about that, right? And with older children, teens, you can actually go a little deeper. You can tell them about what your triggers are because of your childhood and what that meant, if you feel it's appropriate. But it's really about part 1 is engaging in a dialogue and creating the habit of dialogue in a safe space. Like you're creating safety. The child is not hearing, you did this. They're hearing, I am now feeling this, and this is what's going on inside of me, which does not put your child on the defensive. And that creates the pattern of safe space to dialogue. And part 2 of that is if you can, and I really hope that you can try to do this, is try and help them articulate what their underlying needs are, which is how it comes out as behavior, right? Like, so if they throw the socks on the floor, their underlying need is to feel safety and comfort in their own living space. And if you can help them articulate that, then they know that where their behavior is coming from, right? Um, I would say almost 100% children don't do things to get on your nerves on purpose, right? They are not thinking about you, but they're thinking about just doing the thing that comes naturally to them. So helping them to really articulate and get clear about the needs that they are actually matching in that moment that looks like behavior, gives them also the ability to go inside and have some self-awareness, right? And the practicing of talking about emotions and looking and recognizing what one's own needs are, and especially if you start this with your child at a very early age, you are pretty much guaranteeing that they're going to turn into adults with high levels of emotional intelligence. This is how we support and model in emotional intelligence. So it's worth it.
They do it naturally, I find. Like, you know, lots of people are talking at the moment, I've noticed, about teaching children emotional intelligence, which I don't disagree with it, except that you don't need to teach them, actually, because they've got it if you just allow them the opportunity, and holding space for them and creating an environment where they can tell you what their needs are. I think people would be really surprised to see how young children can be and express their emotions really articulately. I just wanted to say, Sophia wants to know where the link is to join. So I can't, Sophia, I can't explain it to you easily because it's actually in another online forum. But what I might do is I might message you after and show you how to get there for next time. Called the Mighty Networks, and I don't know how to explain it quickly. Yeah. Honestly, the people that are sitting in the Zoom room with us are not hearing or seeing anything that I mean, you can't even see their faces because they haven't got their cameras on. So it's cool. But what I wanted to say, and this is directed probably at you, Sophia, is when your child is raging in that moment, and if they're physically lashing out and you are having to maybe hold them or restrain them or be with them while they thrash around on the floor, that's not when you would have that dialogue about what you're going through. That would be later. And it might not even be then, like it might be, it happens in different ways in our family. I mean, every time someone leaves a sock on the floor, I don't go, I need you to know that I'm processing some stuff about that. So like, it's, you know, it's got to be how it works in your family. But the point about that is that it allows your kids to know that when you do react, which sometimes you probably will, they get why, and it invites them into our vulnerability. Yeah, no, that's cool. I can message you after. I do have kids in my household who have very big emotions, so I'm pretty practiced at that. But letting them into our vulnerability, that's really what it is, because we're actually telling them that we trust them, and we're telling them that we have big feelings too. So it also shows them that we get it. Like if they are having big feelings and that's actually what the trigger was, then they know that we also have those big feelings. And it's about sharing our hearts with our kids and trusting them and giving them an opportunity to show us grace, which they do. They get it, like they really do, and they really appreciate being treated with honesty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and there's actually I can attach a really cool resource after as well to this that we've reflected on a lot in our family and still use, by a group called hand-in-hand parenting. I mentioned it before. It's a tool that's called Stay Listening, and it's just simply what it is holding space for your child while they're having an emotional release. Some people call it a tantrum. And it's the release that happens when there's stored tension, and it happens for us too. You know, those times where you just want to like cry or get really angry, something really small's happened, you dropped a glass, no big deal, but you just burst into tears because you've been like holding it in for 4 weeks. Well, kids do the same thing, and it comes out in a tantrum because you wouldn't let them have a Mars bar. And so that's a really handy, it's really handy to know what to actually do, how to be there for your child while they're experiencing that, because often the unmet need, I mean, depending on how old they are, if they can't articulate it because they're 18 months old, having a big emotional release actually gets rid of that tension. And that was it. That was the unmet need. The unmet need was, you know, 2 weeks worth of having to wear shoes and they didn't want to because they had to walk on stones or every day, or, you know, whatever. They don't really like wearing nappies. You know, they're learning how to toilet train and it's really hard, but they can't tell you that because they don't yet have the words. So they just have a big cry for 45 minutes and then they're cool. And that was the unmet need. And sometimes, sorry.
You post that link also into the Mighty Networks?
Yeah, I have shared it before, but I can't remember where, but yeah, I absolutely will. And because it's really a game changer for like what to do, not just in the scenario that we're talking about right now, but yeah, what to do when your kids have these emotional outbursts. And sometimes one of my kids will do this thing that we call leaking in our family. It's only one of my kids that kind of does it. And instead of just, you can tell he needs to do it because it just comes out in little like over like like, oh, he's leaking. And Dylan, actually, my husband, is really good at getting the kids to have a really big cry. It's always been like his thing. Anyway, what I was also going to say was sometimes kids just do stuff for no reason. It's not always an unmet need, but this process still allows you to then work that out. So, you know, like my 13-year-old doesn't like putting her clothes in the wash. Neither does my husband. It's not an unmet need. They just can't be bothered putting their clothes in the wash. So, you know, and it doesn't really bother me, but it might do. It's the sort of thing that bothers some people. But I don't believe there's an unmet need there. They just don't. It's not important to them. So this process allows you to stop and slow down, put your stuff to the side while you move forward and get to the point where you can like assess, okay, is there something going on? Like,
let's get to the last point.
And sorry.
Last point. Let's just, and then we'll take.
Tell me to shut up. Tell me to shut up.
No. Everything is. It's imperfection. I love that. So I gave you so far six points. Actually, the last one were 2 parts of number 5, but that's really 6 steps or 6 points. And the last one is about making conscious choices. Conscious choices. You are making conscious choices to reach for connection, not control. So when your agenda is only to connect, and I hate the word agenda, but if you must use that word, if your agenda, if your desire is to connect, all of the things that will happen afterwards will fall into place because you're not trying to control the situation, control the child, control the behavior. Your only desire is to connect, and that keep that as sort of the message running underneath all of this all the time. That should be your mantra: reach for connection, not control or coercion.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when we put our child in opposition, then, you know, more than likely what you get back is this like butting up against each other, particularly if it's something like well, I'll give you an example that, and there's an unmet need at the end of this one as well. Like Peggy at the moment is just like sucking down the lollies. Like she's just like really in full lolly mode. She can't get enough of like lollies, Cheetos, chocolate milk, Nutella. She's got it all lined up next to her with her like LED lights on her headphones. She's got little ears on her headphones. She's got all her snacks lined up. And she's not even finished one before she's asking for the next one. And that's the sort of thing that has been a big trigger for me in the past, actually, that I've put a lot of work into. But she actually likes it. It's not always an unmet need, but at the moment it is. She's bored, she's lonely, we're in lockdown. She doesn't have any kids to play with, and she will verbalize that, and she will be able to say, I'm not actually hungry, I just want to eat, I'm bored, so there's an opportunity then to work out what to do. So lots of the things that come up in our groups and on our Facebook page are, again, as we said earlier, how can I get my kid to stop doing the thing that's really annoying me, or how can I get them to do the thing that I really want them to do? Going through this process allows you to work out whether that's even true. Do you actually need them to do that thing or not? You might get to the end of this and go, oh, doesn't actually, I can just pick up the sock. It's actually cool. It's no big deal. Or if there's a reason why in your family it has to be a certain way, maybe you've got 7 kids and actually everyone does need to help out because otherwise no one will get to eat. There's reasons why on a given day things might need to happen, but still going through this process, pulling yourself back to that place of calm, acknowledging that the reaction is your work, not your child's work, you're much more likely to be able to get to a place where you can have a conversation with your child or whoever it is that's brought up this big feeling and work out what a solution is. And there are times where a child, always actually, kids, they actually want to do their best, but it just always looks a bit different, because all sorts of different reasons. They're often not able to do the things that we want them to do yet. And one day they will be able to. And then when they are able to, more than likely, they'll do it. But trying to make them do it by controlling them is going to stop you from connecting with your child, even if you end up being able to coerce or manipulate them into doing what you want them to do. You've still broken that connection because you've only done it by controlling them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are there any questions from the people that are watching, or people here in our Zoom room, or people on Facebook? I will copy and paste these steps for you and put them into both places so you have them. It's a wonderful tool to use. And if you do adapt using this tool, please do give us feedback. Let us know how it goes, how it works for you. Yeah.
I just want to, Sophia's just asked another question about hand-in-hand parenting. Yeah. So if you're in the sorry, in Australia, we had a company running these programs called Parenting by Connection, but in the US it's hand-in-hand parenting. So you can go on their website. I downloaded for someone a free ebook that they had up on their website about a fortnight ago, but then when I went back in last week, I couldn't find it. So I will put up the link to the Stay Listening tool. If the free ebook jumps up at me, I'll put a link to that there as well. They've got some other tools that you might be interested in. Everything they do is around connection, and there's a lot of stuff in their programs around neurological development, and it's really useful. But the Stay Listening tool that I was talking about, and that's around holding space for a child who's having big feelings. It's something that we've been practicing in our family since I don't think we even had our 4th child yet, for some years. And it's really been a big game changer because, every parent wants to know what to do with a toddler who's having a tantrum in a supermarket. Like literally, that's gold. And this is what it shows you. Sometimes you just need to know what to actually do. And that's what this shows. So yeah, I will put that link up.
Awesome.
Thank you. Well, this has been a good experiment, streaming in 2 places at once.
Yeah, we just wanted to see if it was possible. We actually thought it would be streaming in Mighty Networks, but we'll play with that a little bit. And as always, if there are any follow-up questions, put them into the comments in both places, and we're active in both places. I know a lot of people are trying to get off of Facebook. I hear that from a lot of people. So again, you are absolutely welcome to join us in community at the community link for the Partnership Parent Movement, which is based on the Mighty Networks platform. And then the other thing that I want to remind everybody is Sarah, my beautiful co-host, does one-on-one calls, coaching with parents, and she's really good at it. If you are trying to work through a specific issue, by all means, book a free consultation with her and see if a month, coaching would help you really move through and make some real big mindset shifts around some topic that you're working on. She's worth her weight in gold. I just want to say that. I don't work one-on-one with parents. Sarah does. I work with teens. So yeah, that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
All right. Bye.
Yeah.